All right. So today is June 1st, 2021. My name is Maria Saldana, and I'm here with Sharon Arana. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can you start by telling me when and where you were born?
Totally. This is gonna sound a little redundant from your intro, which I'm just processing it now. But I was born in Chiclayo, Peru, right near the coast, and then my family immigrated when I was about 3 years old to Miami, Florida, and we bounced around different places in Florida for a while. I mean, in Miami for a while. And then I left Miami to go to college in San Francisco at first. I did my first year in San Francisco, and then I didn't like it. So then I transferred to a school out here in New York, and I've been here ever since.
Nice. Okay. So from Chiclayo. And when were you born?
1998, March 11. I'm a Pisces.
Cute. I love me a Pisces. All right. So you immigrated to Miami. You went to San Francisco for college. You didn't like it. You're in New York City now.
Mm-hmm.
But where did you grow up mainly?
Definitely North Miami Beach. We couldn't really afford to go back to Peru as often as we all wanted to. And it was so like, it was such a dynamic in our family because we definitely were very like working class, low income, but I know my mom like always wanted to go back. So it was always really hard. And it wasn't until middle school, mm-hmm. which was the first time that I went back since I left from 3 years old. And I you know, at 3, it's like, what do you remember? Like just very little things. So when I went when I was about 12, it was like just like different and exciting, but also like terrifying. And I haven't been back since. I think for a while I was very like repressed about it. I was very much like, I didn't have a good time, so I don't want to go back and this and that. But definitely as I've gotten older, it's been like, why am I thinking like that? Like I want to see my family members. I want to see the place I grew up in. I want to see like other parts of Peru, right? So yeah, that's definitely it. And then when I started getting those inklings more like towards the end of high school, it became an issue for me because I was like in between like legal statuses. Mm-hmm. So I had to like apply for my citizenship, but the process for me took about like 3 or 4 years. So, you know, and when you're in that in between, you can't leave the country. Right. So there was times where like my brother went without me or my dad went without me, and like other momentous occasions that I just missed out on. And then I got my citizenship junior year of college. So that's like 2019 or so. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I was like, okay, hell yeah, like I'm going to go back. And I tried to like take advantage of it. I first went to Morocco to study abroad. I wanted to get that out of the way. Not like studying abroad, but anyways. But I just wanted to do it. I jumped on the idea and the opportunity. I came back and I was like, cool, next shot I get, I'm gonna go to Peru. And then the pandemic happened and we're here.
Wow, yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that with me. So I relate, right? In the sense that I didn't get to go back until I was also in middle school. I think I was about 12. Can you talk to me a little bit more about, you said that you had like several emotions come up, right? When you went back, you said that you were excited. And then you also said that you were terrified. Could you talk to me a little bit about what was coming up for you or like why?
Yeah, totally. I think definitely like the overwhelmingness of it came into play. When I say we all, I mean like all my cousins and my uncles that are here in the US, like we all went down for my grandfather's 80th or 70th, I'm not sure, but it was one of those big ones, right? And we all wanted to go down. We all went down. And so it was just very overwhelming. We were there for about a week, and there was just so many people like in one time, and they all had like different desires. Like my mom and my brother, like they really wanted to go to the doctor, and so they were like in the doctor all week and like doing different stuff like dentistry or like cosmetics or like just different like or like health in general, because healthcare here is a joke. So so there was that, but then there was also like meeting all my family there for like what I consider my first time. But then people coming up to me being like, "Oh my God, I know you, like I know who you are," and it's like, you don't know who I am, like I don't know you, like I feel awful, right? And also I feel like 12 is just like such a miserable age. Like you're just upset in general, and it's like I went there like wearing like purple pants and like a studded belt, like just ridiculous. Wearing band tees, like it was so overwhelming. I couldn't wear like my eyeliner as thick as I wanted it to because it was so hot and it was melting. And just like other like those little things that are just like so hard to understand when you're young. I think that then like your immediate response is just like, that's foreign to me. I don't get it. I don't like it. And therefore it's bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, chaotic.
Yeah, no, but I think that you are speaking to a very real occurrence, right? Like you, I think that, and not to make generalizations, but I think what I hear a lot from friends who have kind of similar experiences, they go back when they're a little older, right? And it is overwhelming. It's incredibly overwhelming. To suddenly you're meeting family that knows everything about you, right? Yeah. Maybe it's because your parents have been telling them about you growing up, right? But you are so like, it almost feels like you're so removed from all of them. So thank you for sharing that, because I relate, right? I went back with all of my really angsty band tees as well. So I definitely have, I feel you on that. And you said that, could you just remind me where your family is from? You said Chiclayo, right?
Yeah, Chiclayo, mostly my mom's side, and then my dad's side's more like Lambayeque, like greater Lambayeque area.
Okay, great. And that's the coast.
Yeah.
Right? I just want to make sure that I'm getting this down.
Okay.
And so you've talked to me a little bit about, going back, and you named, right, what, that it's difficult to do so when you have, when you are navigating, I think, a new country, but also what comes with it, like, working class, you've mentioned how it was difficult to go back to Peru. You mentioned, being in between citizenship statuses, right? And these are very, very real things that keep us from going back. And so I'm curious, right, and like where you are now, right, as this person currently today. Is it meaningful for you to have a relationship to Peru or to your Peruvian identity?
Definitely. I feel like here it's so much easier to just hide behind like the Latinx label and just be like, I'm from Latin America and I speak Spanish and I eat spicy food. And it's like, okay, like that's definitely not it, because I'm so much more of a complex person, right? And like everyone is, especially like immigration stories that come with like so much hurt and like so much like different ordeals. Like I feel like there's no one nation that comes with like one standard of like struggles when you immigrate, right? And that's been like the amazing thing of like community pockets in like different cities in the US, right? But I'm saying all this to say that I feel like it's easy to like just like assume and like generalize like a lot of issues that like don't pertain to you, but also like identities that don't pertain to you. I think I definitely started not getting upset, but like I think understanding a little more when I first left Miami. I feel like Miami, like, has, I feel like you don't have to think about nationality that hard, or like where you're from that hard. But, like in San Francisco, like being, or here even like in New York, I get it pretty often sometimes, just being like, oh, you're Mexican, right? And I'm like, oh, I did no, but what do you like, what are you like, what are you trying to say? Like, what are you asking me, instead of that, right? And I think yeah, I mean, I think it's different, right? Like culturally different, like religiously different, or like just the way you navigate the world is different. So I think it's been a lot more important to me to identify with being Peruvian once I kind of came into myself as an adult and started making sense of like myself and my identity and like my surroundings. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I hear the part where you were saying that like maybe in Miami we don't have to think about nationality as much, right? Because I think that, I mean, I'm from Miami, so
Mhm.
I can see where you're coming from, in the sense that like it's very like Latinx, or being, someone from Latin America is just almost like assumed.
Yeah.
And then the very like the specifics of where someone's from, right, or like aren't really considered. So thank you for naming that. And also, right, how do you then maintain this relationship with your Peruvian identity? Because you said that you've stepped into it, right? So what has that looked like for you?
I think for me, it's been a lot of just like rekindling,
Mhm.
like friendships, relationships, palettes, I want to say, like, um, I think there's no one good answer of like, just tattooing like made in Peru on my hand. Like that, I don't think that's the answer, right? But a lot of just like talking, and a lot of like hearing about like family stories, or like um I studied history at undergrad. So like a lot of like learning about Peruvian history, I think has even just been like inspiring, or like um just invigorating in like different ways that
Mhm.
um I didn't really have. I feel like nationalism can be a little tricky like that. Like you don't, especially when you're so far removed, like in like the US. But I think just like finding pride, and like being like, oh, it makes sense that I'm this way because of XYZ. And like before I didn't have the answer to that, but now I do, right? Um, Even little things like um I'm always told I walk funny. And I like, it wasn't until recently that my dad was like, oh, but everyone on our side of the family walks like that. We all have a weird gait. And I'm like, oh, and that's not a particular Peruvian thing, but it was something like, oh wow, so this is more than just me and my dad who are like the only ones here, right?
Right.
And it, like, I come from a lineage, and it
Mhm.
spans in a different country. So
Yeah, yeah, that's really beautiful. Thank you, because it's true, right? I think that I love how you said that, it's not just you and your dad, right, that are in what you just shared, that maybe have this trait, but that it can bring you closer to folks that are in Peru, right, or folks that were before you. So how has the experience of living in the diaspora affected your Peruvian identity? You talked a little bit about the trickiness, right, the messiness of nationalism, but could you expand a little bit more on that?
totally. I feel like it's been harder to find diaspora, like the more that I continue to evolve and change. Because I feel like the, or at least like back home in Miami, like I knew the Peruvian shops that had all the ingredients, right? And I knew like which restaurants were good. I knew which ones were bad. I knew like which are my Peruvian neighbors like around me. But I think being recently like so mobile has like taken away that opportunity for me to like establish roots and feel comfortable to explore for other Peruvians in the area, or yeah, I mean mostly that. So then I've been trying a lot more to go online and like make those connections. I don't think I'm necessarily succeeding, but I'm following more Peruvian accounts, which feels good. And maybe it's not necessarily the answer, but at least it's nice to hear Peruvian slang again, or like see like different people like just living their life, even if it is like from the more like celebrity sort of like distancing. It's not exactly like a friend, like friends that I know or people that I keep up with, but it feels a lot better, and it helps foster, or at least like reinvigorate those connections that I have already, like other Peruvians I know in Miami, or like even like with my brother, like sending him a Peruvian meme. Like I wouldn't have done that before, and he doesn't have that need for it either, I think, because he still lives in Miami. But it opens that conversation. Oh, do you remember when mommy did something like that, or stuff like that. So we're taking baby steps, but I think that's my answer.
Yeah. And baby steps are great. I think I also want to say, right, that I don't think that there is an answer for how I'm going to speak for, like as someone who is a Peruvian in the diaspora, I don't know if there's an answer to how we continue to build relationships, right, when we're just not in Peru. And I think that that's going to vary and look differently. I think that, online communities are so valuable. And there is something to be said about, what a meme between family can do, right? To spark memories, conversation. And there's also something really important and valuable, I think, in knowing where the Peruvian restaurants are, right? Where you're gonna find like things to cook that make you feel closer, right, to your country of origin. And so thank you. And I think that I'm gathering these narratives, right, from queer Peruvians in the diaspora, because like I mentioned earlier, deeper in my studies, I realized that we were missing, our stories were missing, not just from academia, like queer studies or Latinx diaspora studies,
right?
But just at large, right? Like even in communities, it took so long for me to find. And I also think bigger than that, I know that being queer and Peruvian is really central to how I identify. And so hearing you speak, right, it reminds me of what it was like. And still, to like, I would love to have felt that there were other folks who identified at least similarly, right? And we may have different experiences, but something, right? Especially living in the diaspora. And so could you talk to me a little bit about your queer identity? What does that look like for you?
Totally. I identify as a lesbian. This was, I think, fortunately and unfortunately, a discovery that I made during college. I say unfortunately because I feel like in a way, like I wish I had like just more time and like had come into myself a little like sooner. And I already think of like so many different scenarios that could have gotten better if I had known my sexuality early on. But also fortunately, because the college that I went to, Sarah Lawrence College up in Bronxville, is like super like predominantly queer, like predominantly people of all genders, like very low level. cis het men, which was just the perfect place to like come into myself, because then I feel like in a way I didn't really get to experience, I mean, not that this is a bad thing again, but I didn't get to experience like a lot of the, I guess, homophobia that would have been around me, just because the people that I were around and like were already like queer and trans, and they were like, oh, okay, cool, you're gay now, that's awesome. So I'm thankful for that, but at the like I mentioned, I wish I had figured that out sooner. I definitely remember times when I was younger, and thinking like other girls were cute, and I was told like that's not right, and I was like, okay, cool, that's not the right adjective, we'll say pretty instead, or things like that, right? So yeah, definitely, I think that's definitely how I think of, or how I'm currently labeling myself. When I came out to my family, that was definitely a big riff for a little while.
Yeah.
But it's grown so much over the past 2 years, where like, my dad calls me, and like every time he calls me, he also asks about my partner, and it's like totally okay. Like both of my grandmas know, and those were the two that I was like mostly like afraid of, because you know how they go. But now they, for the most part, like most of like I don't think everyone in my family knows, just because I don't keep that checklist, but I think a lot of the stakeholders know.
Right.
And that has really transformed over the past 2 years, which has gone so awesome, and I'm so thankful for it.
I'm so glad. Like, I'm so glad that you. It sounds like you're in a place of comfort and like acceptance in your family. And I like how you said stakeholders, because that's so true, right? Like, who are the people that we feel are deserving to know, right? Like, and not just deserving, but like, who do we want to know, right? Like, and that's so important. I also like that you mentioned college being this place of like I don't want to say like helped your coming out, but it sounds like it played a role.
Totally.
Yeah. And so could you talk to me a little bit about, what does queerness mean to you?
I think queerness to me brings so much like hope and positivity. I feel like it's always like the north facing sort of light at the end of the tunnel for me. And I think queerness has really given me the freedom to like just like say F it and like do whatever it is that makes me happy. I think for me it means just like happiness, and like the ability to be who you want, and like do what you want, because it's like everything else doesn't really matter as long as it's like you're fine with it.
That like brought a lot of joy to me. Thank you for sharing that. And I love hearing that it brings you hope, freedom. That's so important, right? And for queer folks, for everybody. But I think that I would have to agree in the sense that queerness does something similar for me. And so that's really beautiful that you've experienced that. What about queer community? What does queer community mean for you?
Oh man. I feel like the queer community has really, like, for me, it means like home, right? As someone who has like such mixed feelings about what the word home means, like the queer community does feel like home. Like it feels like everything else is out the window, and like you're fine, and like you've arrived, like you're at your final destination, and like just like the place you want to be.
Yeah, I'm just writing some of that down because I'm sitting with it feeling like home, but also you said that you have like difficulty thinking about home. Is am I correct in
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can you expand a little bit more about that, or like home, right? What home means to you?
Totally. I feel like the easier answer is always like home is where I say I'm from, and I at this point I usually just say I'm from Miami, and if the other person wants to keep asking me questions, like they can, but I'm not gonna waste my breath elaborating, because if you don't want to know, you don't want to know. But even that feels so like untrue. And like while I did spend a lot of my formative years in Miami, like I always felt like I didn't belong there, and that was definitely my main reason for going so far away for college. But then when I left Miami, it was like, there's no place like Miami. But even like I mentioned, like there's like, what is that to return to, right? Also, thinking about like the physical sense of home. I feel like I'm often returned to like my childhood home in Miami that doesn't exist anymore. Because my family has moved, and now, other members of my family have moved too. Like my uncle's not where he was, and my aunt wasn't where she was. And it just feels so scattered. And even like to this day, when I have like come back to visit, it's like I stay with my brother, who now lives in Hollywood, but all my friends are in Miami. So then I have to get like a $40 Uber. And like, that doesn't feel like home, like that doesn't feel like a place where I can stay longer than a weekend and hang out, right? So yeah, that I feel very complicated about home, and it also feels disingenuous to say like that Chiclayo is my home, because I can't picture it for you. I can't draw it out, and I can't tell you like what street I live on. And though again, like a physical space does not determine a home, like it feels so disconnected from me at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you for naming all of that. And I hear it, right? I hear what it means to not know exactly what home looks like right now, because as you said, right, it's like, does it really come down to a physical place? It sounds like there's been movement, even within your family, that has shifted how you view home, or what makes you feel at home. And I also think that finding home is going to look very differently for so many of us, right? And I just am grateful that you're being transparent about it, and sharing all of that with me. So you touched a little bit about this importance of community for you. Do you think you found queer community?
I've definitely found at least a pocket that I think serves me, that functions in a way where I can be myself, and like the definition that I had given. I wish it was bigger. I wish I had more friends around me, right? But I'm living in like an all queer house right now, which has been fantastic.
Nice. Yeah.
Super, super nice, super wonderful. But I'm moving again at the end of my lease in August. Me and my partner are going down to DC so I can start my master's.
Wow. That is a move, and for a big thing. Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you. And, I think I know like one or two people down there, but it's another like, oh, we're going to have to rebuild our community. And more likely it's going to be like a queer community just because, us two are visibly queer. I definitely pass, but when I'm with my partner, we definitely don't, I think, or we could be amigas, whatever you want to do. But it's something that's just like so, I think, necessary to like our social emotional environment, um that I think you need. The same way you need like your hometown friends, and you need your nerdy friends, and then you need the friends that you like the same music with. Like I think you also need your queer community. And ideally they could suffice all of that, so then you don't have to hang out with different people. But yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of movement, right? Like you're giving me, this like actual physical journey that you've been on. So you go to DC in August for
Yeah.
your master's, and what are you studying?
I'm going to Georgetown to get my master's in Arab studies.
Dope. Okay. Nice. Nice. That sounds really cool. And you're going with your partner.
Yeah.
That sounds nice.
They're definitely more excited than I am. I'm like exhausted. I don't want to go again. But
Yeah, movement is like, or like not even movement, I'm sorry, but like moving, right, is labor. And I hear what you are saying about needing to have this community, right? Or thinking about this process of then building queer community again in this new place. Um, and like I'm sending you all the positive vibes for that to happen, right? Like that these people come into your life, right? Because it is so necessary, I think. What does it mean for you to simultaneously identify as Peruvian and queer?
it I think before I came out to my family, I thought it was such a contradiction, because it's like I come from like a heavily, is that a real word, Catholic family that I thought was like not gonna take it. But then my I feel like, Miami, while it's like mostly like white rich gays, like I think it does have like a significant queer community there, or at least like a queer population. Like so I know I grew up with queer people around me.
Mhm.
And so I was like, if my family had them as like friends, right, and acquaintances, and like never had issues with them, they wouldn't have issues with me. So now I think being a queer Peruvian is like the coolest label ever. First off, second off, it's 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 so different than like I think other sort of like queer nationalities, because I feel like so much comes with it, and I think so much pride comes with it, because I know like it's not, and then my heart goes out to all like the queer Peruvians in Peru, because it's not easy, and it's hard, and you have to deal with like so many different assumptions. Even here, right? Like being queer here is difficult, and then being a person of color is difficult, and being an immigrant is difficult. So when you put all those in like one food blender and like a person comes out, it's even more hard. But I feel like it just um I feel like it just really enhances and like enlightens like who I am, and like all the perspectives that I bring, and all the like different sides of me that I can offer to people, that I can present to people.
Yeah. So do you feel that your identities coexist in the same spaces?
You know, sometimes they do, and then sometimes they don't.
Mhm.
Um, I think um, some spaces like ask more of one or the other, or
Okay.
that makes one more present. Like for example, I'm working right now as a college advisor at a high school out in Flushing, Queens, like one of the most diverse towns in like the entire country. And so my employers who hired me definitely um, were leaning on the, you know, Spanish speaking immigrant South American Peruvian side of me,
Right.
because of the heavy demand of someone who can relate to these kids.
Mhm.
Um, so I think, like for example, like that part of me comes out often, and I think, um, you know, with Zoom ruining all personal interactions that could ever happen, like actually, there hasn't really been a lot of room for me to be like, oh well, I'm more than this, and I can offer you more. Um,
Mhm.
but it's, you know, it's the same. It's the same way with the kids, because they're not interested in like turning on their cameras, and they're talking to me because they're confused about the future, and then like this isn't my time to be like, oh, so are you gay? Because I'm gay too. And in our like 30-minute like college advising session, right?
Right.
Whereas, you know, in school where like some kids could be visibly queer, or like I could like, I don't know, put like a little like pride flag on my desk or something. It would be like so different, right? Those dynamics would be so different. So that's a long example to say that yes, I think it totally depends, but I think that the places where I can be both are definitely the best places and the cooler places. So like in friend groups or different affinity groups. I'm not really in any right now.
Mhm.
I took a break after college because, you know, college was like all affinity groups.
Right.
So but you know, when I was able to present my full self, it was like the most fulfilling.
Yeah. Um, I, when you were sharing that, like I think that I for a moment had to stop and realize how much Zoom has affected, right? Being able to, I think, like you were saying, right, put a little pride flag on your desk, right, for your students. And I wow, yeah, it's making me think about what this past year has meant in terms of navigating these spaces, right? Because it's like, how do you then navigate Zoom, right, as a space?
Yeah.
Um, and I hear you on what is needed, right? At least in your workplace, is someone who speaks Spanish, right? Someone who identifies with kids, and right, like you said, it's like how do you ask a kid to turn their camera on and be like, oh, are you also queer? Um, so yeah, thank you for naming all of that, because it's making me think about it, and like you're so right, it has such an effect, and I think that there is something to be said about the ways that we have had to navigate an online space. And also, I think it says something about what it means to be visible, right? Or
Yeah.
as a queer Peruvian, right? Because it's like you said, like, how do you tattoo made in Peru, right? Like on you,
Yeah.
like,
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like it requires like so much vulnerability on your part to do that. I mean, like even I can imagine even for your study, like it's all self-identifiable. Like there's no database where you could be like, okay, let me look at all the queer Peruvians in the United States. Right. It was all like people coming forward and being like, oh, I identify with both those labels, right? Or even in like news spaces that have come virtually. Like I was sent a tweet to join this group of Latinx scholars
mhm,
who study the Middle East and North Africa, and I was like, oh, this is like I'm interested, like okay, um, but then it's like, oh, but I don't know who these people are. And it's like, do I just want to be in this group because it's all like Latin Americans? I don't know. Like, are there going to be any other queer people, right? Because not that I've established that it's like that safe Latin American space. Like, what about the rest of my identities that I bring, right? So yeah, no, it's complicated. And then it's up to you to be like, on your first meeting, be like, hey, like I'm Sharon, she, her, I'm a lesbian and I'm Peruvian. And I hope none of you guys have a problem with that, because if you do, that's awkward.
Yes, like the labor of what it means to constantly have to come out, right? Or like to pick and choose when you are going to self-disclose this information, or where. Yeah, I the times that I have wished that I could just be like, hey, like Indigenous, Chirapa Peruana, bisexual, like,
right.
And then it's like, how do you then navigate that, right? Because yeah, it's just such a process of constantly like having to think, is this place where I'm going to self-disclose this?
Exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. It's just so hard online.
It is. And you mentioned a little bit about this dynamic, like of of what it is to identify as queer in Peru. And so I'm wondering, how do you feel Peruvians perceive queer folks?
I feel like it can't, I think there's definitely no country that is perfect with their queer communities, definitely. So I don't think this is special to Peru, but I definitely think that since it does lean conservatively, like politically, religiously, I do think that it's definitely not easy to be a queer person in Peru. And I think that totally depends too, right? Like if you're like in Lima, right, where like safety in numbers and it's a huge city,
Right.
it's probably just a lot easier than any of the smaller towns, right, or more rural areas. Like I definitely don't think it could be perceived well. My partner has asked me before, like, oh, when you go back to Peru, can I go with you to meet your family there? And they're definitely visibly gay, and they're non-binary, and and on top of that, they're a white American. So I'm like, you have all these bad things that are not working for you right now for you to come with me. But and things like that. And I don't know necessarily if it's a safety concern, although of course like it definitely might be, but it might just be like a general like socio concern, and like it's not. And I don't, it feels very, I don't know if this is like common, but I think there's definitely like a certain power dynamic you hold as a Westerner coming into Peru. Like whether we like it or not, we've been socialized here, and we're used to life here. And no matter what, you're gonna come back and you're gonna be like gringa, okay. But aside from like the little jokes, like you do have power, you do have monetary power, you do have political power, you do have those Western powers over the random person on the street, or even someone who's your family when you go back. So I think about all that and thinking about queerness in Peru, and I think it's definitely complicated. And I think queerness can be presented very complicated in Peru.
Yes. And absolutely. And I appreciate you naming these different power dynamics, right? Because I think it also speaks as to why I'm focusing on queer Peruvians in the diaspora, right? Because it's like me coming into this project how do I expect to understand the nuances of queerness in Peru when I have not lived there, right? And I think that at least for my experience, I was navigating that as well. And so how, right, you mentioned your partner asking if they could go with you, and then right, this again, this notion of visibility, right, of going to Peru. And so how do these perceptions that you've named, right, how does this impact you?
You know, I mean, it does make me like sad and like nervous, just a little bit at the same time, because I know, for example, like I don't, as someone who is cis and like doesn't visibly present as queer, like I do have those sort of protections against me that I think like relatively leave me unharmed. And like, I'll like if and when I go back, I'll probably just be with someone all the time, right? Because I think that like, that's the point, to see friends and family. But it does definitely make me sad, because I think all of that to say that it would be a little secretive, or a little just quiet, maybe not secretive, but like just quiet. I definitely had those issues when I went to Morocco. When I studied abroad in Morocco for about a semester, so like 3 months. That at first it was like fine to like comfortably fly under the radar, but then it's upsetting, and then it's hard, because I think queerness comes up in like everyday conversation, like whether it's homophobia or whether it's just like general conversation, right? Like it comes up, and relationships come up, and love comes up, and the way you navigate the world comes up, right? So it does sadden me to think that like maybe I couldn't be there for a long time, or to think that like I would need like someone there with me all the time to like, I don't like steer a conversation or stuff like that, which like has definitely happened with me. But yeah.
Right, and then the labor that it is to have to navigate that, right? Yeah, it's yeah, and thank you for sharing all of that. And so I, in thinking about what you shared, right, of and of what we know of Peru, and right, like no country's perfect in terms of addressing, I think, queerness, transness, but like we know that disproportionately queer trans Peruvians are harmed, right, or experience violence, and it doesn't just happen there, but it happens in the US. And so, how, like my question to you, is how do we as queer Peruvians survive this, right? How do we survive this violence, this harm, the constant labor of having to navigate, notions of visibility, of everyday interactions, like you said, how do you escape your queerness, right, in these moments? You don't. It's there. Yeah.
I mean, like you said, you can't really escape it. Like you can't. It's unfortunately like the battle that we have to deal with. Like that's just the card that we were dealt. But I think at least like seeing from other people like who have made like beautiful ways of resisting and like using their visibility as like an armor, like twisting it, right? I think of like who is it, like La Prince down in Peru, and I'm like, like it's so courageous to just like live your life how you want, like anywhere, right? Not just in Peru, but like anywhere. and just manipulating the system that we're in of like visibility, like may mean violence, but it also means power, and it means resistance, and it means like you can live your life scared, or you can live active and fight. And there's just so much healing and like just power that comes from that. And I think that's definitely just like the right way to maneuver it. I think if you know, I think I'm definitely a firm believer in like spinning the situation. Like, okay, well, if I didn't get a carrot today, I got a tomato instead. And I'm gonna make a tomato soup. I didn't want to make a carrot soup today, I guess. You know, never mind. I don't want carrots. I love tomatoes. So I think things like that, that those moments where you can find joy and like resist and be alive in whatever that means to you, I think is our personal battle to find and to win. And we're gonna win.
Yes, we will, right? We're gonna win. And yeah, I know who Prince is. And I love what you said, right? In visibility. Do you remember what you said? I'm trying to like process in this visibility, you know, there's also resistance, right? It's not just it doesn't just have to be like this source of you know, potential fear or harm, right? It's a reality, absolutely, right? And I think that that those are constantly questions that we are navigating, right? Like, what is this visibility potentially going to bring me? But I like that, right? That it is powerful, and it's powerful to see, it's powerful to bear witness. So thank you for sharing all of that. It's so important. I wonder if there are any other identities that are salient to you. You know, you've mentioned a few, but I just don't know if there are particularly ones, you know, in this moment that are salient to you that you would like to share more on.
Totally. I definitely identified with my socioeconomic level for a while, of being low income, of being an immigrant. I feel like those have just been a little shifted. I haven't deleted them, but they've definitely shifted with me being naturalized and having to reckon with, oh, I suddenly have a lot of legal power that I didn't have before. I suddenly have a passport that I can go anywhere with, right? At least prior to the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
And I think with being low income, I mean that was most of my life until I was about like 16, and my mom passed away, and I was predominantly living with her. And then when she passed, my dad came down from wherever the heck he was. My parents had divorced, I think, by the time that we got here. And he made significantly a lot more money than my mom. He's not rich, but it was still, I mean, it was still different, like from our, you know, being raised on food stamps to being like, oh, I can just ask my dad for $20 today. And that's not a problem. And then of course, like leaving and the magic of loans and credit cards, where I can at least think about it later. But I that in itself like gives me so much more like mobility that other people don't get. Right. I have my first like salaried job now, and it's different. It's different. Like I haven't processed it, and I haven't really thought about it. I definitely still identify as low income. But I know that the way that it's going is shifting. And I think, soon, or soon is relative. It could be tomorrow, or it could be the next like 3 years. That I can't claim that anymore, because I actually won't be low income, right? So yeah, that was a long answer to yes.
Thank you. No, I please, I'm here to hear your story. I'm here, feel free to share, what feels right to you, what feels true to you in this moment. So how would you say that those identities you share, right? This and you name that they're shifting, right? So how would you say that they interact with your queerness and your, you know, Peruvianness, your Peruanidad?
Mm-hmm. You know, I feel like before, especially when I was younger, like they all felt tied, like they all felt like woven together, that like, oh, I'm an immigrant because I came from Peru and that's why we're poor, and it's all like it's like that cycle. But then, you know, you take out the other variables and I'm still Peruvian, but I feel like a lot of it, like in my mind it feels different, right? Because it's like, oh, but I don't have like, but these other ones are changing. But there is that one that's not, it's not gonna change. Like my birth certificate still says what it says, and my passport still says what it says. Um, and um, and you know, like in me, it's still what it is. So I think getting the opportunity to untie them and see how they all play out individually instead has made things a lot more easier, and just a lot more interesting. And I think, you know, coming back to like the questions you asked at first, like what does being Peruvian mean to you? Like what does being part of a diaspora mean to you? And it's like I now have not the urgency, but I have the opportunity to explore that without the other things that I thought were so tied to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so powerful to name. This I'm like envisioning, right, this process of untying. What has that process felt like for you to be able to untie these identities, right?
It feels very fast.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
almost in a way of like, okay, wait, hold on, like I haven't thought about this. um but um it just feels like another layer to the onion, you know. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, like this is just a new development in this long line of questions that I've had like since forever. um and while I'm working on some of the kinks, right, the ones that didn't really work for my new life that my parents decided that I'm supposed to have. I fixed those kinks, but now there's still the kink of I feel odd at where I'm at, and I feel I you know I miss home, capital H, whatever that is, whatever dictionary wants to tell me that the real definition is. Um, so it does feel complicated. It definitely feels complicated. It feels interesting, but it doesn't feel like a burden, which I think is the upside of it. Like I've said, it's just another piece, another layer of the onion that I'm gonna keep encountering. And like if you ask me this question 5 years from now, I'm probably gonna have a different answer, and then something different's gonna happen. So definitely the same onion, just another layer.
Right. You're going through this process, right, of like peeling that onion back and discovering that, right. And it sounds like it's as you said, it's shifting and it can look differently. um I'm also thinking about, you know, how you said soon, right? What does soon mean, right? Like is it tomorrow, is it 3 years from now? And so, you know, in that, I hope that also, you know, as you go through this process of untying, of peeling back this onion, that you also, you know, that you are able to go through a gentleness for yourself. And I say that like thinking about this healing work that I do, because I do healing work, you know, that centers queer, trans, Black, Indigenous people of color. I've been trained in Black feminist methods, with a lot of tenets from healing justice. And so I say that realizing that was like the mindset that I got into, you know, because, you know, I get curious as to how folks, when they're going through these processes, when they're navigating these spaces, or all the spaces that you've named, you know, how do folks center wellness? How do they view and how are they healing? And so my next few questions are going to focus a little bit more on those aspects. And so I'd like to know, what does wellness look like for you?
That's definitely a question I'm still trying to figure out. But I think wellness at least has been if I'm avoiding it, that means I have to do it kind of thing. So that could be anything from like making the bed today to like, I have to call the doctor and I have to make the appointment, because why am I not making the appointment if I have sick days and I have insurance and like there's nothing for me to feel bad about, to having like hard conversations. And I think wellness for me is just getting to it, like just doing it. And I feel so much better after it. I had a dermatology appointment. That's why I saw the doctor this morning. And afterwards, I was like, wow, okay, cool. I did it. So it's the, it's like, and getting to that stuff is just so hard. I think especially during the pandemic, where it's just easy to just be here all the time and not think of anything that's happening. But that's definitely what wellness means to me. It means just, I feel like trucking through is the bad example, but just doing it and you feel so much better afterwards. Whatever it is, right? Just do it and stop avoiding it, because you're avoiding it for whatever reason, but it's like, it's not a valid reason anymore.
Yeah. Thank you for naming all these ways, that you have found wellness, and it's definitely okay that it's okay to not have an answer right away, or to not have a clear-cut answer. It's a process, right? Like we've been talking about before, you naming these processes that you're on. I think wellness can also be a process in itself. What about healing?
Oh man, I feel like healing is one of those things that just totally varies, right? From like situation to mindset. I feel like I take my healing approach very much like my wellness approach of like, just do it. And oftentimes not allowing myself that grace that should come with healing, rather than wellness, right? But being able to slow down and like sit with myself and like think, instead of like, getting on my phone and scrolling. Like that's not sitting with myself and thinking. That's distracting. But just those. I mean, I think it's those little things that do feel better for you. I think in in the past few years. Oh, you froze. Am I frozen?
The recording has started again. And so you were talking to me about healing, and you had a similar process to your wellness, the approach. Please continue. I'm so sorry to have cut you off.
Totally fine. It was good to get that brain refresher. I think for me, healing, what I want out of healing versus like wellness is like answers, and like not answers in the like revenge sort of way, but answers as in like wholeness.
Yeah.
And like peace, I think would be the better word. I feel like in recent years I've been, and I feel, not just me, I feel like this has been like at least a small community reckoning of like race within Latinidad, right?
Wow.
And how like it's not really true that everyone is just mixed of three things: white, European, and Black. Like that's not true.
Yeah.
Who told us that? That's so bad. So I think, you know, for me at least, historical healing and like racial healing has come with like talking to the elders in my family and being like, so like, where are you from? Like, who made you? I know who made me, but how are they made, right? Um, and you know, just you know, hearing different things and like being more, I think like being more in my body and like looking in the mirror and being like, okay, this is how I look like, and this is how I've changed, and this is how I'm perceived in the world, and like these are who my like this is who my ancestors are, and you know, things to reckon with. I've thankfully I have a friend of mine who's um, Puerto Rican and has had. I think I'm the one who shattered it for them, and I was like, hey, you're not a person of color just because you're Puerto Rican.
Mhm.
And they were like, whoa, like, is, is that true? And it came to them realizing that their third or second great grandparents like owned a plantation and had slaves, and like you know that now that's something that they're actively like working on and stuff. This is an example about that, and I'm glad I didn't say their name, but you know, and now it's like beautiful for them, and it's, you know, they went through like the 5 stages of grief, and they're like, oh, you know, the anger, the disappointment, the the scaredness, right? But now they're making like such great plans of how to move forward and how to like keep these conversations going like with their siblings and stuff like that. So they've been a really good thought partner for me, and like also encourage like, and you know, we just encourage each other to like keep asking those hard questions and like like figuring out ourselves, and like I think, you know, like just dispelling the racial myth, right? The Latinx is not a race, and
Yeah,
that's something we have to come into. And you know, there's no easy answer for it either, right? And then there's always those crazy conversations on Facebook, like the subtle Latino traits. I feel like that Facebook group always has that conversation like once a week, and it's never good, and it never ends productively. But you know, like I think for me, like healing would be like coming to that answer, right? Or coming to the point where I could be like, you know what, like I think I figured it out, and I think I have the tools and the knowledge to move forward.
yeah. Yeah, thank you for naming all of that, because there is something, right? I think that we can say that there is something healing in having those hard conversations, right? Because, you know, maybe this conversation with your friend, right? Maybe it shattered her perception of the world, it popped her bubble. But I also think in that, right, we continue to have those conversations, and we're able to continue to check ourselves, right? Hold each other accountable. And that's really powerful. And you know, there is also this I'm hearing, you know, from what you're saying, this longing for answers. And that is so real and valid, you know, valid to want those answers. And so I'm thinking as you're sharing this, you know, I find that sometimes the answers come, you know, from these conversations, and it can come from folks in the community. And so I'm wondering, you know, who makes up the community you're part of? You mentioned some of the queer folks that you have around you, but I'm just wondering, like, who makes up this community, and what role does it have in your life?
Totally. I think I think for me, a lot of the folks that I like to surround myself with are people of color and are queer, and I think those are my only two like determinations. And I would put like person of color over queerness, because you know, white queers sometimes they're lost, and sometimes there's something else. So I don't prioritize that one, but I think I think as someone who likes to have like to bring questions to the table and be like, I will challenge you on this, or you have complete right to challenge me on this, and I could be totally wrong, and I will own up to that. I like having those people that I can grow with. So I think the people around me are definitely people who want to see a better version of themselves and a better version of the world. And so that's definitely how I would describe all of them.
Yeah, that I'm glad to hear that you know, it sounds like you have folks around you that are also willing to do the work necessary to continue to grow, right? Grow individually, grow together, to nourish those relationships. So how has having this community impacted you?
I think it's definitely helped me see different ways of I don't want to say expression, but kind of like expression, right? I feel like once you're like settled somewhere, it's easy to just be settled and not grow, right?
Right.
But getting to like to a point of like friendship and like of you know, the intimacy of roommates is like it's just a different level. And I think it's a different sort of dynamic that you get to play with. And being able to see how, like, you know, being able to compare like yourself, you know, not in a bad way, but just like comparing yourself and how you view things versus someone else who views things. Especially I keep returning to the example of my roommates, but as I'm like the only cis person in my household, so that has been different for me.
Yeah.
I've never not been the only cis person in one place, so that, you know, they've challenged me in those occasions, even if it's not like direct.
Right.
That was always like, oh wow, like I know, you know what, I never thought of that, and I, you know, now I do. But yeah, definitely just seeing different things and doing the work of actually being in somebody else's shoes.
Yeah, that's really powerful, and there's so many ways I think that, you know, when you've established those relationships with folks, that there is a constant process, you know, that there can be a constant process of growing and learning about yourself and unlearning too. And so what about pleasure? Does that come up for you at all when you think about, you know, your intersecting Peruvian queer, you know, identities and the other identities that you named earlier, right? Your socioeconomic status, being cis, you know, what about pleasure and all of it?
I always think that my pleasure height is always like there's always going to be something sweet around me. So that means like going to get boba or getting ice cream or stuff like that. That's my material manifestation of pleasure. I'm one of those people that are like, oh, it's a bad day, I have to go get candy. Like I just have to. You can't talk to me before I go get candy. So there's that, but also I think there's just so much love that comes with queerness and queer communities that is just like kind of inherent to like just who we are and like what we do. And you know, the different forms of love, not just, you know, it's not the sexual like romantic chemistry love, it's caring, and it's kindness, and it's support, and in its own multiple ways, right? That can all mean love and can all translate to love. So that would definitely be also my pleasure definition, like a place where I am loved and I can love, and I could eat ice cream.
is. I love hearing, you know, that love, that queer love comes up for you, you know. It is, but it's so important. And I feel like um, it's something, you know, maybe this love is not tangible, right? Like candy or ice cream or boba, but it is, right? It gives us pleasure, and I think it is so important. And so thank you for sharing all of that with me. Um, and so my last two questions
Mhm.
as we wrap is, what do you wish for yourself?
I think most out of anything, I wish to be somewhere where I can lay roots and I can just be. Like I can just stay there and I can live and I can be myself and I'm content and I'm happy and I don't have to go anywhere else ever again. And I mean, obviously, whatever, traveling and this and that, but I want to put down roots somewhere. I want to know my neighbors and I want to know where the other Peruvians are and I want to know where the gay scenes are and I want to be somewhere where I'm not where I don't have to just say, oh well, I'm a student, so I'm here because I'm at the university, and then I'll be I don't know where. So I think that's definitely my biggest wish for myself is to put down roots and to just be and live.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Sharon. Thank you. Like that, you know, I will envision, you know, you laying these roots down, and hope this for you as well. You know, that sounds really beautiful. And so what about for queer Peruvians? What do you wish for them?
Oh, I wish they're all happy. I wish they're all happy and that they're all fulfilled and that they don't need to explain themselves to anyone and that they could just do what they want to do. I wish them the utmost happiest. I want them to find themselves in whatever that means. I want them to get through all the weird identity messes that come with having like hyphenated identities. I just want peace for them.
That's so beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I just love, you know, all that you shared with me today. I thank you so much for your radical honesty, your transparency, your willingness to be vulnerable. Is there anything else you wish to share with me before we officially close out?
No, I don't think so. Other than you've been an amazing interviewer and have these awesome questions.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that you enjoyed it, because I definitely have. I've loved talking to you. I've loved hearing your story. It like I really don't take this lightly. You know, I know it's labor to tell your story. I know it's labor to go through these questions, you know, that I think aren't as commonly asked in everyday questions. So thank you so much, Sharon. And I'm just sitting in a lot of gratitude for you and for all that you've shared. So we're wrapped. I'm going to go ahead and pause and stop the recording.
Mhm.